Exactly, Sharon, yes.
Okay. Hello, good evening. How absolutely wonderful to see lots of smiling faces. It's always a delight. Welcome, welcome to our very first Stroud Imagines event. And I just wanted to, before I put the PowerPoint on, I just wanted to have a moment of just seeing all your smiling faces in one place, because it's just a delight to see you all for this very special first event for Stroud Imagines. So a massive welcome and thank you for being here with us. It's a real privilege. So I've got a little bit of detail before we get started, just to give us a bit of an overview. Just to ask, first of all, if everybody can see that okay. If you're excellent, some thumbs up, that's really good. Okay. So we're going to be starting in a couple of minutes. If you want to grab a paper and pen, you're very welcome to make some notes and just jot down a few ideas. And I really want to encourage some active listening as we're watching this evening. This would be such a different event if we were in the same room all together and able to experience this in a very different way. But here we are, this is where we're at. And so we've got some opportunity to reflect on some of the things that we're listening to. So I'd love you to think about what inspires you, about the ideas that you hear, if there's any ideas or any ways that you could support the person with that idea. Maybe you've read a book that you think, wow, this person needs to read this book, or this person needs to know about this particular resource. Let's see if we can use our collective power to support the people that are sharing with us this evening. Who do I know who might be interested in this? Maybe there's other people that you could refer people to. And how could I use this in my life? It would be absolutely amazing if we can start inspiring people to do stuff as a result of these events. So I wanted to just give a bit of background first of all about how come we're here. Why did we get together this evening? So Stroud Imagines was actually inspired by an event that I attended in November of last year, which was an event by Rob Hopkins, where he was talking about his new book, From What Is to What If. And what really inspired me is this idea about the power of collective imagination, that together we can imagine things bigger and better than we can imagine on our own. And actually we can support each other to develop these ideas and come up with some really incredible projects. What I loved about Rob's book was it wasn't just the theory about this. This was about how people are actually doing it in practice around the world as we speak. And it was so massively inspiring. So he spoke about a civic imagination centre in Boulogne, where they had groups of different stakeholders together. They had different people from different backgrounds, and they worked together to inspire creativity and inspire imagination and inspire new solutions that people hadn't thought of before. And I got goosebumps. I was just very excited by this idea. And there were a few other people that attended this event who were also excited. What if we had this in Stroud? What if we got people together to collectively imagine? And what if we started to do some incredible projects here? I mean, there are already incredible projects in Stroud. We know that Stroud is built on this incredible wealth of experience and expertise in actions, in civic action. But I would love a really diverse range of people to be involved. I would love even more people to be doing all sorts of different projects. And how can we kind of inspire that, especially in the context that we're in? So we're volunteer run. We're a volunteer run project. We started during lockdown, as all fantastic projects do. And here we are. We've just taken a step at a time to imagine what it would be like if we had something like this in Stroud. And here we are. So we're already demonstrating the power of collective imagination just by being here tonight. A bit of housekeeping stuff. Please do stay muted unless you are speaking. That would be really helpful because it can make a big difference to the noise. It's amazing if you can keep your camera on, because it's lovely to be able to see people's smiling faces. If that's not possible, that's absolutely fine. But it makes a real difference to the people that are sharing to be able to see that they are speaking to real people. active listening with love and respect. There might be topics here that are different to what you expect. There may be topics that actually you don't agree with, or that don't resonate with you, and that's absolutely fine. We can't please everybody with everything that we're doing, but there is an opportunity to listen with that love and appreciate what people are doing, and appreciate the gift that they're offering by being here this evening. It's okay to have kids in the background. We've prepped the speakers to let them know that there may be children in the background, and we are recording the session for people who can't attend, and also for our publicity for future sessions. There is a speaker view and a gallery view, and you may well want to just click on the top right of your screen to decide which view you want, and you get to decide. There's a chat function, and my fabulous colleague Melanie is going to be checking the chat function. She's just waving there, because it's a bit challenging to be able to speak and check the chat function. But we will keep a record of all the chat functions, so at the end of the evening, if there's anything that we haven't been able to respond to, or we've not been able to get to, we will be able to by the end of the evening, or certainly in the future if we don't manage at the end of this evening. And if you have a particular interest in a topic, if somebody's spoken about something and you get really inspired and really excited, and you think, wow, this is amazing, I want to know more, I want to be involved, or I want to help this person develop this idea in whatever way, shape or form, then please do email us at stroudimagines@gmail.com, and we'll be able to pass your email on to those speakers. The chat function is a public space, so you may not want to be putting personal details about contact details and so on into the chat function. Does that all make sense so far? Any little nods or hands up, thumbs up? Brilliant. Okay, fantastic. So I'm very excited and honoured by the people that we have speaking this evening. It really touched my heart, and oh my goodness, I have more of those goosebumps as people were coming forward with ideas of things that they wanted to speak about. It's just such a privilege and such a pleasure to have a diverse range of people on a diverse range of topics, and it'll be really interesting to see how you find it and what your thoughts are. So we're going to have 5 speakers. They're going to speak for up to 7 minutes, and I will step in just to keep on track and on time if people are starting to get close to the end of that 7 minutes. They may not speak for 7 minutes, they may speak for less, and that's absolutely fine. But once we get to the end of that first section, then we'll have a small opportunity for some Q&A. And obviously we've got quite a large group of people here, so I'm afraid not everybody will have an opportunity for Q&A, but I just wanted there to be some opportunities if we can. Then we've got the second set of speakers, and then we've got the 10 minutes for further Q&A. And fingers crossed, we'll be all kept on time, and that should make our evening run well. How is that sounding so far? Is that all okay? I love seeing the thumbs up. That is really positive. Thank you. Yeah, that's wonderful. There's also a little function where you can change if you want to show the grid view, or and there's also, thank you Martin, there's also a thumbs up option. If you're not showing on your video, then there is an opportunity to put a thumbs up as well. So by all means use that. Okay, so I would like us to move on to our first speaker. Oh, sorry, just to remind you of those questions to ponder as you're watching. What inspires me about this? How could I support this person with this idea? Who do I know who might be interested, and how could I use it in my life? So these are the sorts of things that we'll be actively listening for as we're going through. Okay, so I would like to invite Polly Stratford. This is the point where I hope that Polly Stratford is here in attendance, and I will just have a little look and see if I can.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
I'm Polly Stratton, by the way.
I'm sorry, I missed your...
Polly Stratton.
Stratton. Please accept my apologies, Polly.
I've been called much worse.
Do you need to share your screen?
No.
You don't. In that case, what I will do for the moment is stop sharing, and then we should be able to see each other. Okay, I will hand over to you, Polly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity for sharing what I imagine and what I dream will be happening in Stroud in the next 3 years' time. It all started with the Black Lives Matter protests on the back of the George Floyd murder. And I went into town with my family, my very young family, who I'm going to have to put to bed in a minute, my 2 children. And we just stood in the middle of town with 2 friends. There were very few of us, with a few signs, because we felt that I felt that I was so moved by what I saw happening that I wanted to be a part of it. And on that first day, there were about 10 of us, I think, in total. The next day, there were 150 people that showed up because obviously other people were feeling the same way. And then the day after that, there were 350 people. And then the day after that, there were over 600 people. And that's when we realized, because COVID was very much, lockdown was at its height, that we had to stop protesting. And also, I'm very much a believer that speaking about things is important. That's what we're doing now. That's where ideas are germinated. But where action really matters is when you start to plan and do things. So I said to the 600 people gathered at the protest, let's do something. And used the Facebook page that it'd been suggested that I set up as a recruitment tool, and started to recruit people to actually do things. And we just based it on what the people wanted to be doing. And it's blossomed into an organisation. And I feel very proud to be the founder of the organisation Stroud Against Racism. And it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. People are still working incredibly hard at a number of different projects. So what do I imagine? What do I imagine for Stroud? Now, I know you said in the title that I was given that I imagined that Stroud would be not racist. And actually what I imagine for Stroud is far greater than that. Because not being racist is I think, true of Stroud. I don't think Stroud is a particularly racist town. But then we don't have terrible environmental problems here, and yet Extinction Rebellion was born in Stroud. And what I imagine of Stroud in the future is that we are the epicenter of anti-racist small town activity, and that we can be used as a model that other small towns can follow, as a sort of a role model, that the other small towns can take what we've done. They can cast away all the mistakes and all the learning curves and all the difficulties that we've been through to get to where we are now, and just see the way that we've run things in a year's time maybe, and just follow our lead, and for other small towns to become just as anti-racist as Stroud, I imagine, will be. So what's it going to look like? It's very well to say we want to be anti-racist, but I was talking about actions, and actions are terribly, terribly important. The Stroud Against Racism is focused around art, empathy, and education. And in terms of art, we've got some fantastic projects that are going on at the moment that I would like to see being ongoing projects, rolling projects. So the Fringe Festival, it was so successful, but it stopped happening. And I think that what we could have is something similar to the Fringe Festival, but instead of it being focused entirely on music, I'd like to see all the arts. So we have a weekend of an absolute celebration of anti-racist focused art. So we're talking about music, live painting, ballet, clowning, poetry, cooking, all the arts. So children drawing chalk drawings on the floor, botany, everything involved. And that's something that we're setting up for the Maybank holiday. And if anybody wants to get involved or has any contacts with that, that would be fantastic. Typically, everybody wants to be a performer and nobody wants to do the admin. So if anybody wants to get involved in the back side of that as well, that'd be really, really great. Another thing that we've that I see happening with Stroud becoming this epicenter for anti-racism is we're being offered some really fantastic art exhibitions. So we've been offered an exhibition that's been running in Gloucester which is called I Migrate, and it's photographs of local immigrants. And then in the corner, there's the QR code, and you scan it and you get to hear their story. And the point of this is that it very much follows the oral tradition that comes from African history of telling your stories and of telling the stories of real people and engaging real people. So I can see Stroud becoming a place where many of these types of exhibitions, not like I Migrate, but anti-racist exhibitions that raise awareness about cultural differences and how we can celebrate them rather than be frightened of them and see each other as actual people. In terms of education, well, education is huge. We're looking at educating each other as adults, sort of grown-ups. So there are book clubs that are running that are non-fiction. We've got 8 people reading Lila Sad's, 8 different groups with 8 people in them, each of people reading Lila Sad's workbook. We've also got a book club that I've started where we're going to be reading Achuna Achebe's Things Fall Apart, because I'm much more into literature. But then we're going into local schools and we're looking at their libraries, and we're looking at the way that they curate their libraries, and the fact that 99% of the books in the schools' libraries in England are written by white men. Now that's not diverse enough, and that's not going to change if people don't start challenging it. And I imagine that the Stroud area, we can really do something about that in the next 3 years, because I think people are on board with that. But it's like anything that's really simple and really obvious, it just needs somebody to point it out, and then everyone goes, oh yeah, of course, that needs to change. So I imagine within the next 3 years that local schools and local libraries will have a more diverse range of authors and protagonists. I also imagine that the books that are taught within schools are taught with more cultural context. Books like Lord of the Flies or of Mice and Men are not simply read and spoken of in terms of their stories and the narration and the quality of the writing, but also put in context so that the students who are reading them, who come from predominantly white backgrounds with almost, no exposure to different cultures, are helped to understand that these texts are not standalone texts. The children in Lord of the Flies, when they're treated in a negative way because they're savages, this is not something that we should just passively accept. Yeah. Oops, I can't hear you, darling.
Sorry, I'm afraid we're coming to time, so
okay.
If you'd like to wrap up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any closing thoughts?
That's the main part, really. Empathy, I think, comes from conversations like this. We've got hundreds of projects going on at the moment, and if anybody wants to get involved, I would be absolutely delighted. And you can find us on Facebook, and just contact me on Facebook Messenger.
Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. What a fascinating story.
Thank you for having us.
I really appreciate it. Very exciting stuff. Okay. I'm just going to go back to the PowerPoint, and our next speaker is Robin Layfield, a diary entry from 2032. Robin, do you need PowerPoint? Do you need to share your screen?
No, I don't need to share my screen. It's absolutely fine.
Cool. Over to you.
Okay. Wow. That's a bit of a tough act to follow. Probably that was a fantastic talk. It was very inspiring, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing what you come up with. This multicultural celebration festival sounds absolutely brilliant. I'd love to be a part of that. Okay, my talk is a picture of the future, I suppose. A bit of background on me. Some of you might know me. I'm a member of Robborough Parish Council, and what I'm going to read to you now is a vision statement I prepared for the community hall development. I strongly believe, and I think this is in keeping with the aims of this evening, that to be able to really embrace an idea, you have to have a vision of what that idea can ultimately become. So this is my diary entry from 12 years from now. It's called What If, Sunday, September the 12th, 2032. Today is a great day. It's beautiful and sunny for early September, and it's so quiet. I'm taking my kids up to the community hall for the monthly Sunday social. We're going to play games, we'll take photographs, make music or something. It's pretty random, but I know there'll be plenty of cake there. There was less traffic than there used to be. Electric vehicles finally became affordable. And the smell. I remember when Bath Road used to stink on sunny days with all the fumes and exhaust of the cars going up and down it endlessly. The road was like a river, uncrossable, inaccessible. Now it's peaceful, calm. Even the passing traffic is quiet and emission-free. We walk along Bath Road to Golden Cross and turn left up Walkley Hill. At weekends, the top half of the hill is closed to all but residential traffic as part of the Play Streets initiative that's been going on for years now. The street is busy with people going to and fro, visiting Rectory Park, Robert Church and the Old Endowed School, meeting and chatting and enjoying the warm weather. Feels like we finally learned what it means to spend time together outside with our neighbours and friends. We get to the top of the hill. Across the road by the Prince Albert pub, they've got a band playing out in the street. Past the micro orchard and the Brownies herb garden that was planted there. I remember when we dug that over and the kids were so excited when the first fruit started to fall. We head along Butter Road to the community hall. At weekends, the car park at the community hall becomes an open market, selling produce from the allotments as well as local arts and crafts. It's like a mini version of Stroud Farmers Market. Sometimes there's a car boot sale. Occasionally we have a reuse it day where people bring along items they no longer need and pass them on to someone who can find a home for them. And the seasonal repair fairs always go down a treat. The kids immediately abandon me to run around the side of the building to the youth space, an area owned by the young people of Robborough with a resident youth worker and a play worker on hand for the younger ones. I'll see them in an hour or so when they've had a chance to catch up with their friends. I'll walk across the short bridge into the main entrance, which is on the upper floor of the building now. It's light and airy, and as I enter the building, I can see the gorgeous views out across the valleys. It's a wonderful space that brings the whole of Robborough Parish together, serving as a hub for networking and a launchpad for activities from Wallbridge to Swales Hill, Butter Road to Ruxmoor. I walk past the offices, the small meeting room where I can hear a community group planning their next local action. Something about establishing a pocket park down in Dubbridge. There's a buzz about this building, a captivating energy that makes you want to be a part of what's going on here, to really get involved. Downstairs, I can hear a seniors dance class. In the small hall, Sunday Social are doing a joint event with Remembering Robborough to bring young and old together by exploring shared memories of going to primary school in the parish. It's all happening today, right here. It's quieter in the week, of course. That's when we have the citizens' advice and the drop-in support, one-to-one counselling, job training, and Magic Mouse IT sessions. In the week, the large hall is divided up into co-working space where workers can rent a desk or borrow one if they're really hard up or just starting out, so they can remote work in a shared space not too far from home, but far enough that it feels like going to work. It's where the council manages its outreach work that's kept Robborough resilient in the face of all the crises the past few years. I'll take a seat at the community-run cafe while I wait for my kids to return. The cafe, like the rest of the building, is now open every day and is a comfortable, relaxing space, airy and well lit. There's a gallery area, a small lending library, a screen that shows details of our local news and events. I've heard there's even a community theatre improv group that meets here once a week. Coming here makes me proud. Proud of what we've been able to achieve as a community. Proud that we could do our bit towards carbon neutral 2030 in the face of the climate and ecological emergency. Proud that we have the belief in ourselves that we can work together with energy, commitment and love to make our tiny patch of the world a little bit better for everyone. Thank you.
That was so beautiful, Robin. Thank you. Lots of claps going on. I could almost smell it. It was just a delight. Thank you for sharing. That was lovely. I really appreciate it. Okay, so Kirsty is our next speaker. Over to you, Kirsty.
Hi, I do want to share my screen actually. So can I go ahead? Thank you. You're muted now, Charlie. Yeah, excellent. Fingers crossed this will work indeed. Right. Can you all see it? Thumbs up? Yes, thank goodness. Right. So what is this about? It's not really quite a future imagining. It's kind of an attempt on my part during lockdown to have tried to be more in the moment and to open my eyes to what is precisely around me in the natural world of Stroud town. So what have I been doing? So for whole of the hard lockdown, I was actually away. I got caught out at my parents in Suffolk, and the real benefit of that was that I was in the countryside and it was great. And there was a lot of nature all around me. But at the end of lockdown, of course, I came scuttling back to Stroud. I was still furloughed. I'm still furloughed now. So what was I going to do but keep on doing what I had been doing every day, pretty much, throughout the whole of the hard lockdown, which was going for a walk and noting what I saw in the way of flora and if I saw any fauna. But then I live right in the middle of town. I live in Bellevue in a little 1970s terrace. I have to walk out a little way to be able to get to the, you know, the kind of hot spots that you might like to get to, like Hawkwood, like Rodborough. Had to go through the town. So what did I see when I got there? Ah, can I actually share this though? That's the question. Ah, yes, there it goes. Sorry. When I set out in Bellevue itself, I found that I had 19 different species of what probably most of us would class as weeds. So this is not grass. Open your eyes. There is absolutely tons of it everywhere. Everywhere there is not grass, all different kinds of it as well. In this picture, we've got a spurge, we've got a sow thistle, we've got little tiny ivy-leaved toadflax, we've got the leaves of Herb Robert there. Amazing. Evening primroses blooming on my street. Fantastic. By the time I'd got to the end of that walk, I had seen 90 species. I'd walked up to the horns and I'd seen 90 separate species of flowering plants, so plants that were in flower at that moment. I confess I have a database of the flowers that I've seen, because I guess I missed my work at the museum a bit and I need to make lists. So I shot off in every direction, always heading for those rural places, but you know, I saw all sorts of things, and so I learned how to look. And so I opened my eyes to the exquisite detail that you get in some plants. So for example, these are some geraniums that I saw. They're just on the corner near the hospital where there's a little planted area. Not just plants, of course, but insects as well. And I really got to start observing the insects and their passage through the season. Some plants I saw right from their bud through flowering to seed, which was quite exciting. And I've really observed that particularly before, busily bustling about my ridiculously busy life. This is wild carrot. I didn't know that before this time either. I saw some really special things. This is wild helleborine. I'm not going to tell you where I saw that. I even got to appreciate the beauty of invasive species. And I know this is a little bit controversial to say that, but this is Himalayan balsam. We don't really want it, but it's gorgeous, isn't it? I made some friends. Both of these seen right in South Stroud Centre. The little snail, common as muck, of course, is seen at the cemetery, and the meadows that are just a hop, skip and a jump away between Slad Road and Summer Street is where I saw the slow worm. I nearly trod on it. It was awful. And I saw some unexpected things as well. So these are pyramidal orchids. They're really common around here, but these I saw just outside that little strip of glass where you walk along past the police station from where I live on Bellevue to Parliament Street. So orchids blooming just there, completely in the urban environment. Wonderful. And then this poppy that was just growing out from an abandoned cement sack just below Uplands Post Office. Even the walls of the Conservative Club had plants growing in them. I saw loathed plants like the ragwort, the cow killer, supporting all sorts of different kinds of wildlife. So 2 different kinds of butterflies, and I haven't obviously internalized this completely yet because I've completely forgotten what one of them is. One of them's a ringlet, can't remember the other one. And then these are actually Camilla's caterpillars that are just outside her door, the cinnabar moth caterpillars on a ragwort that she was watching and was waiting for them to go before she cut it down. So we got chatting, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here tonight, to share what I've been up to. So what happened, the season started to change, of course, as time has gone on. It's become much more autumnal, and I started to get a bit worried. Would I still be able to, you know, cope with having to go out every day? Still didn't really want to interact with the old world of busyness and shopping and cafes and all of that. But there was beauty in the change as well. And, you know, there are seeds. There's figworts on Bellevue, the horseweed, more beautiful as a seed than as a flower. I'd never noticed it before. It's everywhere, absolutely everywhere, in every crack and crevice. And even in decay, there is beauty. So obviously I'm going with my camera, but you don't need a camera to be able to see all of these things. And I discovered, of course, that there are little secret pockets around Stroud where people have already started to expand the natural world out for the ordinary people. That isn't a formal park, but, you know, is just there for anyone to use. So, you know, I don't really have an answer or really a complete vision how this could go forward. I just was really, really aware that there was so much already there that was wild, that was opportunistically just coming out wherever there was just the slightest crack and crevice. And it kind of gave me a sense of hope. And it really has nourished me throughout all of this period of not being able to go and do my job, not being able to have my normal life, and not being able to, you know, see all the friends I've wanted to see. I haven't felt the need to go back to shopping and cafes and well, work is going to have to happen, but the kind of ridiculous busyness, this has kind of opened my mind to a much easier way of being able to just walk out and take in what is there, even in front of the garages in Bellevue Road, you know, in Bellevue Close where I live. I found those 19 species. It was amazing. So what I'm kind of hoping that will happen, that my imagining is that we will rewild ourselves, inspired by these things coming out of the cracks and crevices of our pavements. Thank you.
That is wonderful, Kirsty. Thank you. I absolutely love the idea of rewilding ourselves. That is, yeah, superb. And the attention to detail is just stunning. I think we could all take some of that into our lives. So thank you so much for sharing. Very appreciated. So our next sharer is Peter.
Okay, so just imagine a place, a town if you like, gently nestling in the glorious Cotswold Hills, a place where people are compassionate to themselves, compassionate to others, and compassionate to the world, where people feel connected and happy, where people are good at bouncing back from adversity and are resilient to deal with what comes their way, where people know where to go for support and friendship, a place which has transformed its rather horrid Georgian and Victorian mills of harsh labour and poverty into something we can all be proud of and proudly bequeath to the people who come after us. Now, I don't know if you've heard of the Action for Happiness movement, but it's a strong movement around the world, supported by the Dalai Lama, no less. Its mission is simple and profound. Its mission is to increase happiness in the world. And so now it's a global player, an agent for social change. It has a network of happy cafes, places people can go to for a cuppa, a sandwich, and a venue where they can connect with other people and explore aspects of happiness. There'll be talking tables where you can know that you can gather with other people and connect with them. There'll be fixed events every week or every month where an event is hosted by someone and co-hosted, where they can talk about different aspects of happiness and how they're getting on. It's fun, it's creative, and it's useful. So there is a network now of them, but there's not yet one in Stroud. But hey folks, the good news is that the directors of the subrooms have just said that they are happy for us to create a happy cafe in the cafe area of the subrooms. And we're now poised to make this a real thing. We have a core team which consists currently of 3 people. Zarin, hi Zarin, a chap called Gavin, I don't know if you know Gavin, and myself. And we're looking for 3, 4, or 5 more other people who can work in this core team to host and co-host regular events, one a week, say, in the cafe, and to support others in being there. So my request is there anyone else who would like to become part of the core team managing the Happy Cafe in the subrooms? And if you are interested, then let us know. So we just need you to be comfortable being there, comfortable hosting a little event there, co-hosting, and being a person who wants to actively be part of the change movement known as the Action for Happiness movement. And that's all I have to say, folks. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for sharing, Peter. That sounds fascinating, and how exciting to have already gone some way to making that happen. That's absolutely brilliant. So yeah, very exciting. I look forward to hearing if people would be interested in taking that forward. So yeah, that sounds really good. Excellent, thank you. So we've got one more sharer before we have our Q&A, and that's Roz Savage. What if the future arrives in Stroud first? Over to you, Roz.
Thank you, Charlie. Well, it's wonderful to be here. I feel a bit cheeky on two counts. One is that I only moved to Stroud a year ago, so I'm very much the Joanna come lately. And also I feel like the future already has arrived in Stroud in so many ways, which is really the reason I wanted to move here. I was friends with Polly Higgins, who I'm sure many of you will know at least by reputation if you didn't know her personally, and had stayed with her many times in London. And I knew that wherever Polly was moving to, when she came over to this side of the country, it was bound to be somewhere cool and exciting, full of people with big ideas for the future. And so when I was looking to move, I Googled to find somewhere within a certain number of miles of Stroud, and so here I am. And even though sadly I arrived too late to have Polly as a neighbour, I feel like she is still very much alive in the psyche of Stroud. So what an amazing place. The home not just of the late great Polly Higgins, but also of Extinction Rebellion and Earth Protectors. I'm not going to presume to tell Stroud what I think it should become. I'm very appreciative of exactly where Stroud is going. But I do know three things for sure that I would like to share a bit about this evening. The future is uncertain, and I think if 2020 teaches us nothing else, it has shown us that. Secondly, that we need community. And thirdly, that we especially need community that includes women's voices. And it's wonderful to see so many, such great diversity on the call tonight. So it was with that in mind that I was audacious enough to apply for the license to organise TEDx Stroud Women, as I see some of our applicants on the call tonight, and it's wonderful to see you again, having watched your videos many times. As you probably know by now, we had an impossibly difficult task trying to narrow 84 amazing applications down to 9 speakers. We could easily have run 10 TEDx's in Stroud and still have had a really solid lineup. So the reason that I really wanted to organise this is so that we could showcase the amazing place that is Stroud, and especially Stroud women. Although, guys on the call tonight, please don't tune out, because as I'll come on to later, we do need everybody. We need all hands on deck. So I'm not going to do a screen share. I'm just going to put on a virtual background, if I can just do this. Oh, sorry, I was going to try and do this quickly. I forgot that Zoom loves to rearrange my virtual background, so now I can't find the one that I wanted. Never mind. I was just going to put up TEDx Stroud Women and our Emergence logo on my background. But if you look at our website, imaginatively called tedxstroudwomen.co.uk, you can see there exactly what I was about to show you. But what I really wanted to bring up then was this idea of emergence, which the committee and I chose as our theme for TEDx Stroud Women this year. And one of the reasons I loved this idea of emergence is that it has multiple meanings. Clearly, we're all hoping to emerge from lockdown at some point soon. Would be nice. Although it's wonderful to hear people who are finding the gifts in lockdown as well. Thank you so much, Kirsty, for your beautiful talk. But I've been nerding out on chaos theory recently. And this idea of the emergent properties of chaotic systems. These emergent properties it's where the whole becomes greater than the sum of the parts, where when people or natural organisms or molecules come together and create something that no individual item or person or creature there could have created on their own. So another way of putting it is the butterfly effect, because in chaotic systems, the impacts of small actions can be disproportionately huge, which could come in handy round about now if we're going to head off the chance of complete environmental meltdown. So what I'm really hoping that we can do through TEDx Stroud Women is to bring together the Stroud community around our lineup of speakers, because it's not just down to the speakers to make this an amazing event. It's down to everybody. It'll be the connections, a bit like tonight, Charlie. You've created a wonderful forum here for people to support ideas that they get excited about. And I hope that we'll be able to further that mission on the 29th of November. Because I really think this is going to be so important going forwards. Over the last probably particularly the last 70 years, we've become a very individualistic society. And I do think that one of the things that lockdown has reminded us of is the importance of community, whether that's been because we've been cut off from our usual tribe, or whether it's because we've actually got to know maybe our neighbours, or we've been Zooming with our family more than we used to in normal times, that we're actually really coming together as groups and recognizing that we need each other. I love that African saying that if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And I really think that is the invitation of these times. And I'm very inspired by oh, really, wow, 7 minutes goes fast, doesn't it, when you're having fun? Thanks, Charlie. All right, I shall wrap up there. Finally, I do believe that change happens from the ground up. I think in our country, and when we look across the Atlantic and at many other places around the world, we see that we all have to step up and be the leaders that we want to see, the leaders who will take us to a more peaceful, equitable and sustainable future. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you, Roz. It's just such a privilege to have you here with us today and to share. I'm very much looking forward to the TEDx in Stroud. It's wonderful that you've organised that. So yeah, it's been sorely needed. So thank you for for putting that together. So we have a little bit of time. If there are any questions that people want to ask, I'm really conscious that we're not in a position to be able for everybody to be able to ask a question, but if you would like to raise your hand either physically or by using the raising hand icon, you'd be very welcome if you have any questions for any of the speakers that we've had so far. Camilla.
Hi everyone, oh, it's really lovely. I wanted to ask Robin, what's going to stop you doing that vision for the community centre for Robborough?
I hope nothing will stop it. I hope everyone will get on board with it, but it needs that vision. People need to see that vision and feel a sense of ownership of it. If the community wants it, it'll happen, and I'd love to see it happen. I'm determined. to do as much as I can to bring that vision to fruition, and all the little ancillary projects as well.
And do the community know about your vision?
It's been talked about for many years. It's been a long ongoing discussion, but it's about to become a much bigger discussion because we're going to the first phase of consultation. So, yeah.
Great, great, go for it. I think you won't have to wait until 32 to make it happen.
Thank you, Camilla.
Wonderful, thank you, Camilla. Polly. You just have to unmute, Polly.
1 minute, sorry. I can't remember the name of the chap who was talking about the Happy Cafe.
That was Peter.
Peter, I'd like to ask you about your Happy Cafe, because there's something that we've been talking about in Stroud Against Racism, but we haven't got anybody to run it. And I know that one of the really popular threads that we've got on our Facebook was somebody saying that he felt very sad that Stroud wasn't more multicultural, and yet there seems to be a lack of mixing of the cultures in Stroud, and everybody very much jumped on board and said that they would like that to happen. And then there's been this library that people talk about borrowing people from each other, and I think that his Happy Cafe is a very similar concept, and I would really encourage you to get in touch with me, because I think that's something that we would really like to support and get involved in, and if you're interested.
Polly, thank you, brilliant. I will be in touch with you. I'm not quite sure. I'll find out from Charlie how to get in touch with you. But yeah, I promise I will be in touch with you next week. Great, yeah. Good to have that connection with you.
That could be a really interesting, a creative and different approach that would be really fascinating to see how that could evolve. So yeah, brilliant.
Just making a note. Thanks, Polly.
Angela Smith, it looks like you have your hand up, is that right? You might need to just unmute, Angela.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Thank you very much to all the speakers. It was a real delight to hear you speak so passionately about your ideas for the future. I grew up in Stroud, but moved away as a late teenager, and I've just moved back with my young family to settle. So it feels especially exciting for me to be involved in this so early on, because I definitely see this as my long-term future. And I do have a question for everyone in relation to Robin Layfield's vision for the future. Do you know if the Play Street scheme exists within Stroud Town Council, Gloucestershire Town Council?
I've heard of play street schemes in Bristol and in London, in the bigger metropolises. I'd love to see it get off the ground. We've got something smaller. We're doing quiet lanes in Rodborough, which is trying to reduce the flow of traffic, but play streets is the biggest step to really get there.
I worked for Playing Out in Bristol when I lived there, and I started as a volunteer. I set it up on my own street, and then I worked as a freelance support worker. So any residents that liked the idea but they weren't quite sure how to make it work, it was my job to empower them and encourage and support and hold their hands to set it up. So I would just, my heart would burst to be involved in that sort of work here, and to help people do it, and to liaise with Playing Out to see how we can lobby the council to make that happen. I haven't been in this situation before where it doesn't exist, and to try and make it exist in a town-wide scheme. And I now live on Bath Road, which I think in your vision you walk past my house, and it makes me so sad that I can't see Playing Out happen on my road where I live. However, to know that there's the possible support and enthusiasm just around the corner is lovely. So maybe we can talk another time.
I'll be in touch, Angela. I'd love to hear what you know. I'd love to work on that. I think Martin.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Angela, just to say that there's a woman who's not here this evening, Gisela Lee, who has been trying to set it up in Thrupp, and I'll put you in contact with her.
Amazing. Thank you.
Wonderful. How exciting. This is exactly the sort of sparky stuff I was hoping would happen as a result of this sharing. So great. Roz, I think your hand was up next, and then Zarin, I believe.
Thank you. It's kind of a question to everybody, but inspired by Kirsty. I I don't know if there's anywhere in Stroud where it might be possible to have a living wall, because they're such a sort of visible icon of greenness. And also, assuming that the climate's going to get hotter, they are really lovely and cooling to stand next to. I think it would be symbolically as well as practically a really wonderful visual symbol of greening urban spaces.
Camilla, did you have a response to that?
Yeah, I'd just like to say there's an accidental living wall up Cornhill, which is round the back of Iceland. And that wasn't intended, but it's fantastic, although some of it's just got cut down. And there is a new living wall, but it's not wild, it's a kind of planned living wall opposite Rowcroft Medical Centre on the multi-storey car park on Mary Walks. And that was designed by a student from Stroud College and built by the Five Valleys shopping centre people. So it's there, and there is, there's a lot of moves in the town to increase things. But I was thinking from the town council point of view, we run the Bisley Road Cemeteries, which is a nature reserve. And last year or the year before, there was a bio blitz in that old cemetery, and there were hundreds of species found of plants and beetles and creatures. And I was just wondering whether a kind of street bio blitz would be a really fantastic thing, following up Kirsty's ideas. Maybe next summer when all the caterpillars are out, it would be really interesting to do the very urban bits of Stroud and follow up Kirsty's work and get some of the Gloucestershire Naturalist Society people who are specialists in beetles and caterpillars and butterflies. And I mean, their knowledge is huge. And I think that would be a great thing to do it on the street with magnifying glasses and get lots of kids out and stuff, rather than just an obvious natural place. That's what I really love about Kirsty's work, is that it's not obviously, that's not where we're looking for nature. We're looking for nature in parks and lovely places like that, but it's on the streets, isn't it, under our feet. So totally. That's an idea that I've got to take back to the town council in Stroud.
And if anything I can do to help with that, I'd be really, really pleased.
Yeah, you bet. You'll be right in there, Kirsty.
I've been listing flowers because that's kind of interests me more, and I know more about it. But I've become quite keen on insects in the later part of the summer, so absolutely a fantastic thing to do. I'd love to help out with that, and it'd be really, really great to get children involved as well.
It would be wonderful. Bug hunt all around Stroud, a bug hunt in your street. We'd have to close the whole town though, of course. That might be a bit radical, but hey.
Let's do that then. We've got one more question from Zarin, and then we'll move on to our next set of speakers.
Actually, it wasn't a question, it was a comment, sorry.
Okay, no worries.
It's been so amazing, and actually that's what Stroud Imagines wanted to do, which is to create a space where people with different projects have come together. And I just don't want to lose all of the interaction and intersection that's taken place. So you think about the idea of the people library, and there's been so much that's gone on. People are having the same thoughts in different pockets. So there was the World Cafe, and then there's the interfaith movement, and idea of faith and cultures movement, and it was just there's so much that's been going on. And I just think that we need to bring it all together, and we need to make sure that we bring everything together. And maybe the way we can do it is through Stroud Imagine, unless there's another fora. But we definitely mustn't lose the ideas that have come up from tonight, and I'm sure will continue to come up.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Zara, and I wholeheartedly agree. Yeah, that's been a big motivation for us to look at how we can be a catalyst for even more creative stuff around Stroud, and also to involve some of the less usual suspects. I think that's another key part that motivates quite a lot of us that are involved, that it's not just about the usual people who are already incredibly creative and already doing amazing things, but how do we also reach out to some of the people that may not automatically think of themselves as being creative or being involved in sort of social change aspects. So just really exciting. Thank you so much. What an amazing first half. Very exciting. So we have, we're going to go over to John Medley, who's going to speak about let's celebrate our pastoral landscape. I'm just going to double check that John is actually here. He might be on my second screen.
Yes, I'm here.
There you are, John. Thank you. Over to you.
Okay, thanks very much. Well, this is perhaps a little different to the others. I've been encouraged actually to speak about this, and it's about something that I think is fundamental to our future as a species. So this is the view out from Coley Peak looking towards the Tyndall Monument, and you can see it's about 90% pasture, about 10% deciduous woodland. And I want to look under there at the soil. Soil, which is the mixture of minerals, organic matter, gases, liquids, the countless organisms that together support life on Earth, the frontier between geology and biology. And to quote Confucius, humankind, despite its artistic and technical abilities, sophistication and accomplishments, owes its existence to 6 inches of soil and the fact that it rains. And that soil is teeming with life. A hectare of soil contains 15 tons of organisms, 1.5 kilograms of life per square meter, and half of the weight of that is fungi, and the fungal mycelium is the soil's connective tissue. So how much topsoil do we have in the world? Well, not a lot. Based on FAO figures, about 8,400 cubic kilometers, and if you make that into a sphere, you can see that little blob there over Middle England. That is the world's topsoil to a depth of 20 centimeters. And if you stretch that across the world's farmland, 2/3 of it is covered by pasture grazed by ruminants, which is the world's largest single solar panel.
Sorry, can I just interrupt you a moment, John? I don't. Are you imagining that you're sharing your screen at the moment, because we can't see anything at the moment? Have you got slides or something you'd like to share?
Gosh, I am sharing my screen.
Can anybody else see?
No, we can't see it, John.
No.
I can imagine it, but I can't see it.
At the bottom.
Maybe you haven't pressed share on the bottom right.
At the bottom of your screen, there should be a green share screen button.
That shared screen.
Yeah, and then you've got, that's it.
There we go.
Can you see that?
Yeah, we can see that now. Thank you.
Right. Can I start again? Do you mind?
No, that's fine.
I'll be brief. I won't go through it all. But this is the view from Coley Peak to the Tyndall Monument. 90% pasture, roughly 10% deciduous woodland. And I won't go through what I said just now about soil, but soil is absolutely fundamental to our life. And we owe it, there's only 6 inches of it, really, and the fact that it rains, that's what keeps us going. And the soil is full of teeming with life, and the fungal mycelium is the soil's connective tissue, which we have to protect. So how much topsoil is there? Well, I said 8,400 cubic kilometers roughly. And if you look at it, that is that blob over Middle England. That is all the world's topsoil. And if you stretch that across the world's farmland, 2/3 of it's covered by pasture, grazed by ruminants, the world's largest single solar panel. And there, those are the figures from FAO. That green, that is the world's farmland. As you can see, 2/3 of it is grassland. And so we can see grassland in Mongolia, we can see grassland in North America, we can see grassland pasture in Afghanistan, we can see it here, sheep on pasture in Romania, and here, Oakbrook Farm, just north of Stroud. Now, but this biodiverse pasture, it's indigestible to us humans because it's made up of cellulose, which is the most abundant polymer on Earth, which could be disastrous, but fortunately, there is a mobile self-replicating anaerobic digester that converts it into nutrient-dense meat and milk and produces manure to feed the soil life. And there it is up on Selsley Common, and here late night dining on Selsley Common. And here, the red pole cattle on permanent pasture at Ruscombe Farm. But despite pasture, soil and grazing ruminants coexisting like here for millennia, these animals are accused by many, incorrectly and often vulgarly, of being a major cause of climate change. And we are encouraged to move to a plant-based diet, some cases a wholly plant-based diet, as if it was a panacea. Well, let's just look at that. Let's look at one of the main elements of our plant-based diet, bread. Here's organic wheat growing on the Cotswolds above Cheltenham. As you can see, it's a monoculture. When it was cultivated, it used diesel, it broke up the soil's fungal mycelium, it released carbon into the atmosphere, and it produced basic carbohydrate and protein. And then when it was harvested, it uses diesel, it compacts the soil. And this is organic wheat, but 95% of UK wheat is non-organic, which uses fossil fuel intensive artificial fertilizers and plant protection chemicals which seep into our rivers. Now compare this. This is on the same farm, biodiverse pasture, fossil fuel free, carbon neutral, if not carbon negative, producing protein and a wide range of beneficial minerals, vitamins and fatty acids. And it heals the soil after being cultivated to produce the wheat that we just saw. This is Eve Balfour. She was the founder of the Soil Association. And she based all her work on that of Albert Howard. And Albert Howard based his work on 30 years experience in India, working with peasant farmers. So the organic movement actually came out of India. And he said the health of the soil, plant, man is one and indivisible. Livestock, sorry, I can't see that. Man is one and indivisible. And if we look at the biodynamic side, the Biodynamic Association based in Stroud, that's beyond organic. Here we see that the ruminant animal is actually at the core of biodynamic farming. So here on the left, we see carbon-rich soil under pasture. On the right, we see carbon-light soil under arable. And the late Peter Melcher, former policy director of the Soil Association, told me one day, John, I may be a vegetarian, but I could not farm my land in Norfolk without livestock. So let's look at land use in Gloucestershire. Here it is on the left, the light blue, that is pasture. So 44% of all land in Gloucestershire is pasture, 77% of farmland is pasture, and 11% of all land is trees, mainly deciduous. So if we come to Stroud, we can see that 80% of the land is farmland, and 3/4 of that at least will be pasture, with again about 11% of deciduous trees. And here we look around Stroud, you can see Stroud there in the middle, surrounded by pasture, the green, and the red is the deciduous woodland, which marries so well with pasture. So if we look here, this is on the top of Snow's Hill. The top is a panoramic view, looking out. Down at the bottom left, we're looking here from Snow's Hill towards the Tyndall Monument. And there on the bottom right, we're looking down into the Slough Valley, and it's all pasture. So around Stroud, grazed pasture is our single largest solar panel. The soil under it is our largest single store of carbon and water, and it heals and feeds the soil after cultivation. So looking to the future, let's protect and celebrate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. That was really fascinating. I really appreciate your input and your and your discussion. I noticed there was one comment that said, would you be able to share your slides with people after?
Yes. I mean, I'm conscious, very different from everybody else's presentation. I like to work quietly, to sort of beaver away in the background. And I mean, these slides, I deliberately produce them. Anybody wants them. There's lots of factual stuff. They'd be very welcome to have them.
If you would forward them to me, John, and then I'd be very happy to forward them to anybody that's interested. But I really appreciate your contribution. It's really fascinating. And I personally feel that we need these broad, different talks and different information to be able to build on what's here and to know what's valuable and have a bigger awareness. So I really, yeah, I really appreciate your contribution. Thank you for being here today. Okay, so I wanted to share a little video actually as our next sharing. I'm just going to go here first, and I'm going to skip forward a little bit. Can people see that okay? Is that okay? Yeah, fabulous. Okay. So as I was getting ready for this event, I actually came across a little video, and I just thought it really inspired me, and I really wanted to share it with you because its title is "What if people with Down syndrome ruled the world?" And for those of you who don't know, I have a very personal interest in Down syndrome. My youngest son, Thomas, who's now 3, was born with Down syndrome. Yeah, it was quite an event. And I just wanted to share a little bit about that this evening, because I think that the theme of diversity is really important to me, and I thought it was useful to include it. He's also been a massive motivator for me in all kinds of ways in my life. And so it was I thought it was quite useful for him to be present, even just in the photos. So the first photo you can see there is when he was just a few days old in an incubator. He was very, very unwell when he was born, and we had no idea how things would turn out. And actually, a couple of times we weren't sure if we would be taking him home from hospital. So he had a very difficult start to his life. But I'm very pleased to say that he's dramatically turned things around, and you can see him there on a climbing frame that's built for kids that are 8 to 12, and his determination and yeah, his get up and go attitude is really shines through. So yeah, he's very inspiring and very motivational for me, and I would love to see us exploring how we can include people with different abilities in our world more effectively. So I'm just going to share this with you. Hopefully this will work.
It's a new world order. More orderly, more honesty, more creativity, and a lot more hugs. This is What If, and here's what would happen if people with Down syndrome ruled the world. Today, people with Down syndrome are generally treated with love and respect by those around them. And despite having an intellectual disability, people with Down syndrome have many successes to be proud of. Here's a Spanish city councilor, a fashion designer, a pro swimmer, an actor, and an entrepreneur and philanthropist. Historically, however, we haven't been very supportive of people with Down syndrome. But would it be a different story if they were in charge? On average, 1 in every 1,000 babies around the world is born with Down syndrome. Down syndrome is considered to be a genetic disorder that occurs when abnormal cell division creates an additional full or partial copy of chromosome 21. People with Down syndrome might look different, and they generally have lower IQs than people who don't have Down syndrome, but that doesn't stop them from being valuable members of society. Unfortunately, it took us a while to realize that. Until sometime in the late 1950s, people with Down syndrome in the US used to be kept in prison-like state institutions. Sometimes seen as less than human, people with Down syndrome were often separated from the rest of society. But how would our behavior change if people with Down syndrome ruled the world? Would they treat us poorly for being different from them? Would government and infrastructure be as efficient as it is today? How drastically would our society change? And would it be for the better? The first thing you can look forward to is a much more organized and scheduled world. People with Down syndrome are said to be punctual and headstrong. They tend to like routines and have a keen attention to detail. In a Down syndrome society, these traits would show in a number of ways. For example, your 9 to 5 would actually be a 9 to 5. No more meetings gone long, no more sudden last-minute deadlines. And if you have plans to meet friends for drinks after work, they'll actually be on time. With some extra effort, we might even curb the number of delayed planes, trains, and other modes of shipping and transport. But a more efficient world doesn't have to mean a busier one or a more stressful one. While people with Down syndrome take their work and responsibilities seriously, they're also very self-aware, affectionate, and caring. Anyone, from your boss to your head of state, would encourage you to take care of yourself, relax, and live in the moment. You might also expect a rise in arts funding and cultural activities, since a common way for people with Down syndrome to get comfortable is by being creative, whether that's writing, drawing, solving puzzles, or making crafts. And if that's not exciting enough for you, people with Down syndrome love to party. Being surrounded by fun, social people who don't mind a good dose of hugs is just the kind of environment that makes them happy. So if dressing up and dancing are your cup of tea, this could be the world for you. Just so you know, hugging wouldn't be limited to the dance floor. In fact, a hug might even replace the handshake in this friendlier and more open society.
Brothers don't shake hands. Brothers gotta hug.
People with Down syndrome know they're different from a lot of other people, which is why they tend to be less judgmental and more empathetic. They also tend to be more honest and direct, which can rub some people the wrong way, but showing a bit more transparency and compassion towards one another would probably be a refreshing change from today's norms. Another benefit would be cleaner living. Streets, buildings, city parks, and hopefully the planet as a whole would be a lot cleaner. People with Down syndrome are known to exhibit some obsessive-compulsive tendencies, which can be challenging at times, but on the plus side, their emphasis on tidiness might make us rethink how we treat our environment. But are all these changes beginning to overwhelm you? Changing the world isn't easy for anybody. But interestingly, research shows that children and young adults with Down syndrome have significantly higher adaptive skills than you might exact from their lower IQ test scores. So if you're struggling with change, don't be afraid to ask for help from anybody. Sound advice can go a long way, and so can a really good hug. Medical scientists continue to study Down syndrome in hopes of helping those who have it. If they can, who knows what could happen? But that's a story for another What If.
Thank you for that opportunity to share that. I really appreciate it. That's one thing Thomas really struggled with during lockdown has been the lack of hugs. That he's just like, why can we not hug everybody? I want to hug everybody. So yeah, it's been quite an interesting one. So thank you for the opportunity. I would like to invite Lianna to come forward, and she's going to be speaking about what if Stroud led the way in racial literacy. Thank you, Lianna.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to read it off a piece of paper because I'm not that clear and I won't stay on track, but I really enjoyed watching that. As you know, I have my younger stepbrother's Down syndrome, so I really enjoyed watching that, and I think it was really lovely. Okay, so a little bit about myself. So I'm currently in my last year of my degree, studying psychology at the University of Gloucestershire, and my area of interest postgrad is race education as I progress onto becoming a registered community psychologist, which there aren't many of. So I have lived in Stroud for a year and a half now, so I'm new too. And I have to say, not only is Stroud and the surrounding areas just so beautiful, it's the first time I feel like I can call a place home. And for me, that is a real big deal because I've moved around a lot. So the reason I feel like I can call Stroud home is the diversity of the people and the openness of the people. It feels to me like there is a natural sense of it's okay to be you, something that I have always struggled with. Because of this attitude, I was able to sign up to this event and feel okay about talking about something in a way of almost giving back to Stroud, especially as I have a son who I would like to grow up here. So please, I would just like to say that I'm very aware that such topics do make people squirm. And, you know, for me, I'm exposing myself on a subject that is my reality, regardless of how you visually see me. And I'm speaking to you, and the only person I know on this call is Charlie and most recently Polly. So along with COVID, there's no doubt been a massive focus on the George Floyd murder. And obviously that shook the world, and quite rightly so. The younger generations are saying no more, and I think it's time that we supported them. So usually the reactions I have experienced recently post George Floyd, in a sense of trying to talk to my friends who are not of colour, I committed to redirecting my focus to those who are not as resistant to change, and that's fundamentally our children, who are the future. A school is where our children spend most of the time outside of home. It makes sense that we support the nurturing of our children's future through the education they receive. So my vision for the future is that children look back on the civil unrest of today and say, how did we let that happen? Not why did that happen? If we continue as we are, I've lost my track now, there will undoubtedly be another George Floyd. And those who are saying why are the ones who are resisting the reality of the lived experiences of their fellow humans. I don't want this for my son or any of our children. We cannot continue securing this future of intolerance, inequality, and the ideology of having a superior race. We are one race, and that is the human race. So what if, just like Stroud so proudly supports our climate crisis, what if Stroud recognises and gets behind the change of a crisis that has been passed on for hundreds of years? What if Stroud leads the way in racial literacy? So racial literacy is not just about the language we use. It is a tool for both educators and students to identify and resolve racially stressful social interactions. And please note that I use the word educate and not teach. An educator leads us out of ignorance. In essence, through education on race, inclusion and equality, we are supporting our children to have a positive emotional response to diversity. Unfortunately, this is not what is happening today. If we are able to educate our children by schools openly welcoming the need for change, by seeing the importance of teaching truthful British history, recognising the importance of learning how to challenge racial abuse, and most importantly, supporting our children by welcoming conversation. I cannot help but feel baffled when people don't want to engage in what I feel is a very exciting time for change. I understand that in a place like Gloucestershire, it can be hard to recognise the importance of such a need for this in our schools, but I feel, being from Birmingham and having grown up in the Cornish seaside town, with lack of visual diversity, supported by lack of education, means we are sending another generation of people out into the world still not understanding and still asking why. To put it into perspective, as a mother of a son of colour, I didn't get to choose when it was the right time for me to talk about racism. We addressed it when it happened. However, I did get to choose how I delivered that message to him. And that is where all of us have a moral obligation to learn such skills. For parents on this call, you will understand the fear of your child being bullied. But for me, it goes beyond that. It's the constant reminding he has beautiful skin. It is ensuring I actively source pictures and books that represent him. It is important that I expose him to Black history and culture. I have to be extra aware of how he manages his times of anger. I have to be extra aware of reminding him we are different but the same. It is important that as he grows, I need him to be prepared that no matter how hard he works, how strong his values, how talented he is, he will never be on an equal playing field. I don't want him to have the same experience and have to go through the same thoughts and conversations with his children. I ask you, if you wouldn't want this for your child, how can you tolerate it for another child whilst promoting community? This current movement is a human responsibility. I have a part as much as you do. We need to ask ourselves, how can we help? Education to me seems like a very simple starting point. I'd like to end with an extract from Dr. Martin Luther King, which I feel resonates with my what if and the residents of Stroud. He said, "We are all complicit when we tolerate injustice." He said, "It is not enough to say it will get better by and by." He said, "Each of us has a moral obligation to stand up, speak up and speak out. When you see something that isn't right, you must say something, you must do something. Democracy is not a state, it is an act, and each generation must do its part to help build what we called the beloved community, a nation and a world and society at peace with itself." So thank you for listening. I'd like to mention that I am really excited to be working with Polly and the team at Stroud Against Racism, which actually came about after I searched when I jumped in with 2 feet and said to Charlie, sign me up to the event. I don't really know what I want to talk about, and I was unsure whether to actually go ahead with it because I know this is not a nice conversation. But, you know, on being the person who's delivering the message, it's also not a nice feeling for me to do it. But I really appreciate you guys listening, and the work that I will be doing with Stroud Against Racism is as a support group facilitator, where I'll be holding a safe space for those who have or are experiencing racism, so they don't feel so alone, but equally connected with more allies who want to support the change that is happening. I hope to have offered some food for thought, and I hope to have offered an invite for schools, families, people of colour to get in touch and continue this conversation if you would like to know more about predominantly racial literacy. Okay, thank you.
It just means so much to me that you were here, Lianna. I cannot say how important it is for us all to be having this conversation, and I completely respect how difficult that is for you to be the person that's doing that. And I know how that feels, and I know how it feels from the perspective of being a parent of a child with Down syndrome and knowing how I need to stand up sometimes when I might not want to. So I know I can really relate to that. And I would absolutely value your support in discussions around the development of Stroud Imagines to make sure that we are doing everything we can to be aware of our racial literacy and how we can spread appropriate messages and positive messages going forward. So I just want to say a really heartfelt thank you for being here. It just feels so important to me that we have these discussions, that we have these spaces for people to be able to express themselves and express where they're at, and to be able to inspire other people to be able to take action. Positive action is just really, really key. So thank you so much. So I'm very pleased to be able to hand over to our final speaker for the evening. We have Simon Pickering, who has a fabulous title, Message from My Care Home in 2046. A real privilege to have you, Simon. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's been an excellent evening. I'm really enjoying it. So, my pension provider tells me I'll survive till at least 2046. It's late afternoon in September, and I'm leaving my care home for a cycle ride while Sally goes to choir. They're now specialist care homes for anyone, from horse lovers to football fans, petrol heads to samba bands, whatever you want. We have chosen a care home that focuses on wildlife, singing, and yoga for the over 80s. Perfect. My electric tricycle has flexible suspension so it can corner without tipping over, but stays upright if I fall asleep while riding along. It has a sat-nav, a tracker, and can be remotely programmed by the care home staff to self-guide me home when I get lost and tired. I head down through Stroud, saying hello to everyone I know, I think I know, and many I don't know. It's 6:10. The high-tech workers are back in the open-air cafes after their lunchtime siestas, getting locked into their personal full-face live communication sets. I have no idea how they work, but cleverly, they can look over their internal screens and see the real world occasionally over them, keeping an eye on the kids playing in the streets. Yes, real games, real kids, free from their school headsets, which they've had to wear from 8 till 12 every day. They're still hammering and banging in many of the old houses, Retrofitting for carbon zero homes by 2050 is still good business. Berkeley Green continues to be the largest retrofit skilled training centre in the UK. Self-guided electric cars silently whiz past. Only those driven by teens have illegally fitted retro-engineered roars, screams and whoops as they nip dangerously between the slow-moving trains of cars linked together by Wi-Fi. The buses never recovered from the pandemic. But now, all cars automatically stop for cycles because nobody has been able to hack the auto stop, so no problem. I head out of Stroud on the Canal Supercycle Highway. The canal is no longer used for boats. Water shortages in the 2030s meant it is now used as an underground canal to refill the large freshwater reservoirs in the Vale. The cycleway is built over the top to prevent the water evaporating. Large flocks of parakeets career noisily overhead on their way from raiding one vineyard to another vineyard. The valleys are much more built up now, with closely packed carbon zero flats and apartments, full of people from all over the globe, surrounded by communal gardens and paths. The built development goes all the way past Forest Green Rovers Stadium. After FGR won the Champions League in 2038, the stadium was rebuilt to hold 50,000 socially spaced fans. This is also now the home of Gloucester Rugby Club. After Kingsholm, and in actual fact most of the city of Gloucester, was flooded 4 years on the trot in the early 2030s. Sun glints off the vast areas of glass houses that cover much of the Severn Vale. After Brexit and the second pandemic, jobs and local food production won out of the NIMBYs and pretty views from the escarpment. Many have solar panels on their roofs to provide power and shading from the intensive summer heat. They are crucial for the local economy, producing fruits, vegetables, salads, herbs, drugs and flowers, both for local and national consumption. It's amazing to think that this all came from that one business that began using the spare heat from the now defunct Javelin Park incinerator in the mid-2020s. The main Wetlands Trust building is closer now, having been moved to the east of the canal. As a result of financial cuts following the original pandemic, many of the River Severn's flood defences were never repaired. The land was turned into a vast wetland for carbon sequestration, creating an amazing wildlife habitat. I get to the bird hives just in time to see the stunning spectacle of hundreds of wild flamingos and pelicans coming in to roost in the saline lagoons. A computer at my care home knows where I am, and after checking with a real program, it reprograms my trike to get me home. But as I pass through Stonehouse, I finally remember the password to override the program that is linked to my iris patterns. So I set off up to Standish Woods, up through species-rich grass pastures, where extensively grazed cattle and sheep cast long shadows. There is now continuous woodland from the Forest of Dean, running between Gloucester and Cheltenham, with a land bridge over the M5 to the Cotswold Escarpment. Continuous woodland stretching all the way to the New Forest in Hampshire. I keep my lights off, looking out for wild boar, which crossed the Severn 20 years ago. They are now both very abundant and very wary, having become a major pest of soya, sunflowers, vineyards and oats. Nobody seems to be able to do without locally produced oaty milk now. They have also become expert into breaking into glass houses. Most, but not all vegan and animal rights activists have accepted the outcome of the most recent citizens' jury, which recommended that wild boar can be humanely controlled in Stroud, as long as the meat and every part of their body is used locally. No wild boar sightings tonight, but I do get a glimpse of a beautiful pine marten bounding across the path in front of me with someone's prize bantam in its mouth. As I approach Haresfield Beacon, I hear the choir singing their last song into the setting sun. still outside after the third pandemic in 20 years. But with mics and earpieces, they can sing outside in perfect harmony. As the choir finishes gossiping, Sally's bike computer recognises my bike. And as the moon rises, we set off back down the hill to Stroud, just in time for wild boar stew and those very comfortable, locally produced soft leather slippers. Thank you.
Fabulous, Simon. Thank you so much for sharing. That's glorious. You've built such a beautiful picture there. That was really lovely. Although I'm not sure I can quite stretch to wild boar stew, but you never know, things may change in the future. Maybe that will become more palatable. I'm just so honoured to have had everybody speak this evening and to be able to share what you've shared. It's been a real honour. We do have a little bit of time if there's any questions that people have for the second set of speakers. If you want to either physically raise your hand or if you want to raise your hand, that would be lovely. Roz, it looks like your hand is raised. It may be from earlier. And Angela, it looks like your hand is raised.
Yeah, sorry, that was from.
I think it's from last time.
From last time. No worries. Any other questions or comments for any of our second set? Camilla.
I thought it was really interesting, the idea that from Simon, that Stroud district is intensely occupied but also intensely food producing, and linked in with some of the things that John Medley was saying as well. And I know that the Landwise group is really seriously looking at those issues, because if climate change is as terrible as everybody's going to expect, that's a huge influx of people from all over the world are going to need housing. They're going to need looking after in the land that has the best soil, that has the best the best resources. And that actually we should be proud of being able to project a future that could accept a lot more people and feed them, or think about how we feed Gloucester in the event of climate change, climate extreme. So it's a real huge responsibility, and that kind of vision of the Stroud Vale, looking at all of that pastoral land and all of that agricultural land, which could produce masses of vegetables and not quite so much grain, is going to be a really important issue for us for the future, and keeping all the plants. So there's a lot to do, isn't there? But thank you. It's really, really thoughtful. And I also like the technology for you, Simon, that you could be programmed to get home safely. I thought that was a wonderful idea, having lost a couple of older people who are a bit vague geographically. I think that will be a great thing for them to have a way to get home. Keep working on that one. That's a real winner. That's a real winner for all of us.
It's a wonderful idea, isn't it? Robin, over to you.
Yeah, just going back to John's talk, which was very interesting. There was a talk at the District Climate Action Networks Forum the other day from a guy called Matt Whitney of the Local Nature Partnership. And he talks about a map they've produced, I think it's of Gloucestershire, down to 2 by 2 metre squares, mapping out the terrain, the land use. And I wonder if you've got soil data that you might be interested in sharing with them, because they're trying to accumulate data to do different levels of information.
So is that to me?
Yeah.
No, I mean, the maps that I produced, one of them came from the Centre for Ecology and Hydrology, which you need special software to, which I don't really have. So I got someone to do it for me. And then the one of Gloucestershire came from Simon, found that actually on the BBC. Put me in touch with these people. I mean, I'm very keen to see, but I showed all that I could find at the moment. I mean, quite. I mean, whether we need to be able to do down to 2 metres square, I don't know. What was the purpose of what they were trying to do?
They're looking at land use in the region and really trying to map like available woodland space and grazing. I wonder if there's could that be a kind of like a crowd exercise where people do soil measurements right across the region and gather that data? Is that something worth doing?
Soil is such a complex thing because I mean, soil is, it's almost like we've had so many thoughts about Stroud culturally, and all the different aspects of life in Stroud, and same with the soil. Once you get into the soil, it's so hugely complex, and it depends upon the mineral content, the moisture, and the way that it's used, and so on. And as of now, there is no single agreed technique for measuring carbon in soils, believe it or not. There are two chosen ones, and you have to choose one and stick with it. So soil is hugely complex. But I think, basically the important thing is that soil should be covered and protected at all times, if that's possible. And if you do have to cultivate it, which with organics you do because you can't use glyphosate and things like that, then you would then do what they've done since time immemorial, which is once you damage the soil to produce the plants for the plant-based diet, you then would put that down to pasture, bring in ruminant animals, they'd encourage the biodiversity, they put the manure back into the soil, the dung beetles, all these kinds of things. It's that, those sort of the broad principles. I remember that some years ago, Simon will remember this, Dave Cockcroft and Fiona Macmillan looked at whether Stroud could feed itself, Stroud District could feed itself. And the answer came out, well, in principle it could, but be a lot of potatoes and no beer. But then the sort of cynic's view was, well, even if we could feed ourselves, if Gloucester was hungry, they'd come and take it all anyway. So the point that was made earlier about feeding Gloucester is very real. But yeah, maybe we can be in touch separately about this and carry this. I just say, actually, Philip, you very kindly put up the Pasture for Life website on there. The Pasture-Fed Livestock Association started in Stroud 10 years ago in Cheltenham Quaker Meeting House. It's now nationwide. It's now 600 farmers right across, now into France. I had recently a request from Jordan for certification. Right. So that's really another encouraging thing. But I could talk all night about it, so show me up.
Thanks, John.
Thank you for sharing, John. And yeah, I'll be very happy to put you both in touch with Robin and John. Simon, did you have a question or comment you wanted to make?
Well, no, really, the project Robin was talking about is the Stroud Nature Partnership. They're actually using it, trying to map the ecosystem services of Gloucestershire to overlay it to influence development. Where is the best places to plant trees in terms of sucking up pollution? Where are the best places to plant trees in terms of preventing flooding? But at the same time, more importantly, avoiding important species-rich areas and grasslands, and advocating where the best places to create wetlands for carbon sequestration. So it's an interesting project. They're about to launch, I did see a draft, they're about to launch the project fairly soon. It was designed to sort of link with strategic land planning as well. So it's some biodiversity offset thing. And it will link with the tree strategy and a project the county is launching in October.
Lovely, thank you for sharing. Zarin, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, it's just another comment really. Isn't there, it's actually on the Radio 4 yesterday, I think it was, might be today. Isn't there a project in Gloucester which is nature and development or something? Is about, instead of thinking when you're doing a development or a redevelopment, that you look at the nature that's there as if it's something that you have to get rid of and then put on the concrete. It's actually based around looking at what nature is there and then building around it, because nature has a is a resource, is a wealth, And I just maybe, and I know that there's a couple of projects in Gloucester that is using this, so I would imagine that they're local. So maybe that could also link up with what these other projects that you've been talking about.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's Building with Biodiversity, which is a project that's come out of Gloucestershire Wildlife Trust. Gemma Jerome, who's a Stroudy, runs that. And
I think it was something different. It wasn't called Build with Biodiversity. There was another thing. But
yeah,
maybe.
But it was also linked to a project. The two projects cited were the big development, the Cyber Centre east of Gloucester, which the Gloucester Leper promoting, and I suspect they may have cited the Second Home projects in the Cotswold Water Park, where we introduced beavers in 2003, but also it's got a nature conservation plan. And the person who runs that is Phoebe, who also lives in, just in Stroud district as well.
Fantastic. Lovely. Thank you for sharing. Any final comments or questions? Anything else anybody would like to add? It's just been such a delight. I cannot tell you how lovely it's been to share this time with you and to hear the different shares. It's been really inspiring for me, and there's lots of different sparks and thoughts have been going off in my mind. It's really, really, I'm really, really grateful. I just want to share a couple more bits before we go. I wanted to share, if you do want to find out about a project or an idea, then by all means email us at stroudimagines@gmail.com, and we'll be very happy to put you in touch with the speaker. That would be amazing. You can follow our Stroud Imagines Facebook page. You can join our Stroud Imagines community on Facebook, and you can follow Stroud Imagines on Twitter. It'd be great to get as many people involved and knowing about Stroud Imagines as we can do. And I just want to say an absolutely massive thank you to all of our speakers. It's been absolutely amazing to have you all here. Thank you to all the volunteers who've been helping out over the past few months. And thank you to everybody who's here for coming along to our first public event. I would absolutely love it if we would all unmute ourselves and give ourselves a great big round of applause, because I'm really impressed. Fantastic.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you.
And Charlie,
You're
excellent.
really welcome. Thank you. We do also welcome any feedback. We'd love to do more of these events. We'd love to encourage more people to be inspired to imagine about Stroud, imagine positive futures for Stroud. If you've got any, please let me know. And we are hoping to have our next event in third Wednesday in October. So if anybody knows anybody who would like to be a speaker or who would like to come along, then there's an Eventbrite link for October already up and running. Thank you so much to everybody. I really look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you for some group imagining.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye, Will and Charlie. Excellent.
Bye, everyone.